Okay, so you sent us this excerpt from A Brief History of a Perfect Future.
And wow, it's all about trust in 2050.
Uh-huh.
Talk about a timely topic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like every time I turn around, there's some new tech,
Right?
like some new thing to figure out.
Yeah.
And with every swipe and click, it's like, is this for real? Can I trust this?
It's
You know
true.
what I mean?
It's like the digital age has thrown this like massive question mark
Yeah,
on like the whole idea of trust.
totally.
But what I think is so interesting about this excerpt is that it doesn't just like
Yeah.
dwell on the problems. It
Yeah.
like jumps ahead,
Okay.
right, to 2050. And it's like
Right.
this really optimistic picture.
Right. It's like all sunshine and rainbows compared to how we think about these things now.
Totally.
They're talking about cybercrime practically disappearing.
Yeah, it's down to like $20 billion
Do we believe?
from 250 billion.
I mean, come on, that's a huge difference.
That's a drop in the bucket.
I know, it's crazy. And get this. No one even seems worried about elections being hacked anymore.
I know, it's wild, but that's the point.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to paint this picture
Okay.
to make us ask, like, how did we get here?
It's that roadmap thing.
Exactly.
Like we were saying, it's less about telling us what the future holds and more about saying, hey, if you want to get to this awesome high-trust future,
Yeah,
these are the things we got to figure out.
exactly. And they break it down into these, like, 4 key ingredients for a trustworthy 2050.
Okay. Lay it on me.
So authentication and security, like you were saying.
The whole, like, are you really who you say you are online thing?
Exactly.
Which feels like a bigger and bigger question every day.
Right. And then there's truth.
Okay, so how do we actually know what's true?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially in the age of deepfakes.
Oh, don't even get me started.
I know, right? And then, of course, there's privacy.
Right, because what good is all this tech if we're giving up control over our own information?
Exactly. And then underpinning all of this is security.
Right, because what good is a trustworthy system if it's vulnerable to attacks?
Exactly. It's got to be built on a solid foundation.
Okay, so we've got authentication,
Yes.
truth,
Yes.
privacy, and security.
Those are the 4 pillars.
Okay, I'm with you.
But they don't just like drop these big ideas and leave us hanging
Oh,
around.
no.
They actually talk about how we might get there.
They do, and you're not going to believe this, but technology might actually be the trust builder we've been waiting for.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
One of the key things they talk about is this idea of triangulation.
Triangulation, like on a map.
Well, yeah, kind of.
I don't see the connection here.
It's actually pretty clever.
Okay.
Think about how GPS works.
Okay.
You need signals from 3 different satellites to figure out exactly where you are, right?
Right.
So this excerpt is saying, imagine using that same concept to verify your identity online.
So instead of satellites, we're talking about using like pieces of information.
Different data points.
Okay. So like my phone knows where I am.
Yes.
And maybe my laptop knows what websites I visit.
Exactly.
And if you put all those pieces together, it paints a picture of who I am.
And who you are is harder to fake than just one single thing.
Okay. That's pretty interesting.
Right.
So what does this look like in 2050? Give me the futuristic scenario.
Well, imagine this.
Okay.
You wouldn't just have a password.
Which, let's be real,
Yeah.
I can barely remember the ones I have now.
I know, right? But in this future, your online identity would constantly be verified
Constantly.
by a whole bunch of different things.
Okay, like what?
Like your wearables,
So like my smartwatch?
your smartwatch, your fitness tracker, maybe even your smart glasses,
Okay, what else?
biometric data,
Like my fingerprint.
your fingerprint, your voice, maybe even your heartbeat.
They can use my heartbeat to verify it's me?
It's all connected.
Wow.
It's like having a digital fingerprint that's nearly impossible to fake.
Okay, that's pretty wild.
Right. They even talk about things like ingestible sensors.
Oh, hold on. Ingestible sensors.
You're telling me I'm gonna swallow a microchip just to prove who I am?
Well, it might sound crazy now.
It kinda is.
But think about it. We already have pacemakers and insulin pumps.
True.
This is just like a smaller version of that.
So you're saying it's not that far-fetched.
Technology moves fast. Think about how quickly we went from those clunky car phones
Oh, yeah.
to smartphones.
I can't imagine life without my phone.
Exactly. So in the future, your smartwatch, your contact lens, even your heartbeat could be part of your digital ID.
So I'm basically walking around in a digital bubble.
In a way, yes. And it's all designed to make you more secure.
Okay. I'll admit that's pretty cool.
But even if we have all this amazing tech, it feels like there's always going to be that human element to trust. Right?
Absolutely.
Like we can't just program our way out of this problem.
It's way more complex than that.
So how do we deal with the human side of trust? especially when it comes to stuff like misinformation online.
Well, they talk about a couple of interesting ideas.
Okay, I'm listening.
One is building real-time fact-checking and source rating right into social media.
So it's like every time you see a post,
Yeah,
it tells you if it's legit.
exactly. Like imagine if you saw a crazy headline.
Which, let's be real, happens all the time.
I know.
And then right next to it, it said, this source has been known to share false information.
Right. Or this claim has been disputed by multiple sources.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that would change things, wouldn't it?
It would make it a lot harder for misinformation to spread so quickly.
If that's true.
Of course, it's not foolproof.
Right, because someone still has to decide what's true in the first place.
Exactly. And that's where things get tricky.
It always does.
But the idea is that by giving people more context, they're more likely to make informed decisions about what to believe.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we've got this super advanced authentication.
Yes.
We've got real-time fact-checking built into everything.
It's a whole new world.
It really is.
And they didn't stop there.
There's more.
Oh, yeah, they get into this whole other thing.
Hit me with it.
Data trusts.
Data trusts. Is that like where we keep all our data safe and sound?
Kind of. It's the idea that you should have control over your own data.
Instead of it just floating around in cyberspace at the mercy of every tech company out there.
Exactly. They use this example.
Yep.
You remember that whole thing with Target a few years back?
Where they figured out a teenager was pregnant before her own parents did?
Yes. Based on her shopping habits.
Yeah, that was kind of creepy.
It was. And it highlighted how much information these companies can get from our data.
And how they might use it in ways we don't love.
Exactly. So data trusts are a way to take back some of that control.
So I could say what companies can see my data and what they can use it for.
It's all about transparency and control.
Okay, so it's like a digital lockbox for all my information.
And you get to hold the keys.
I kind of like the sound of that.
So we've got authentication, truth, privacy, data control.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. And then they throw in this whole other curveball.
Oh, yeah.
The Zuckerberg redemption.
I know. It's wild, right?
So Mark Zuckerberg retires.
In this scenario, yeah.
But not before he has a major change of heart.
Apparently so.
I need details.
Well, according to this fictional news piece,
Okay.
it was a combination of things that led to his transformation.
Okay. Like what?
Societal pressure,
Okay. So people were fed up.
basically. And then there was increased government regulation.
So the heat was on.
Yeah, and then maybe even a bit of,
A guilty conscience.
maybe. You remember that letter he wrote to his daughter a few years back?
Oh, yeah.
Talking about making the world a better place?
A lot of people were skeptical.
I think it's fair to say that.
So this news piece is saying that eventually he actually has to back up those words with actions.
It's like he comes full circle.
It's like he goes from being the poster child for everything wrong with the internet
To the guy who helps fix it.
Talk about a redemption arc.
Right. It makes you wonder what would actually have to happen in the real world for something like that to play out.
Seriously. But maybe that's the point.
It's less about predicting the future and more about getting us to think about the choices we're making now and how those choices could lead to different outcome.
It's a call to action.
I like it.
So what do you think? Are we headed for a trustworthy future? Or are we all doomed to get catfished by deepfakes and live in a world where we can't tell truth from fiction?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball,
No crystal ball.
but I do think this excerpt brings up some really important questions.
It definitely does.
And it gives us some hope, too.
Okay, I'm here for the hope.
Me too. Right. It's like we were saying, it's not just about doom and gloom. It's
Yeah.
about, okay, if we want a better future, what can we do to actually make it happen?
Absolutely. It's on all of us.
It is. Okay, well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
I agree.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
Definitely not.
So to our listeners,
What do you think?
are we headed for a more trustworthy future?
Or are we all doomed?
Let us know.
Head over to our website,
Leave a comment.
send us a message.
We want to hear from you. And who knows, maybe your idea will be the one that helps us build a better future.
That's what we're hoping for.
Okay, until next time,
Stay curious
stay informed.
and keep diving deep.